When a narcissist realizes you're finally done caring, they don't walk away quietly. They explode, they unravel, and then they play their most dangerous card because the moment they feel the power slipping from their hands, they reach for a trick so manipulative, so calculated, most people never see it coming until they're already pulled back in. And here's the unsettling part. This final trick is never obvious. It doesn't look like manipulation. It looks like change, like remorse, like love bombing, or even like a crisis that forces you to return. But the truth behind it is far darker. Stay with me, because understanding this one pattern will save you months, even years, of emotional damage. If this is hitting you harder than you expected, pause for a moment and like this video so more people can protect themselves from these patterns. And let me know in the comments if you've ever seen this personality flip in real life. When a narcissist realizes they're losing emotional control over you, something inside them snaps. This isn't about love, connection, or missing you. It's about losing the power they secretly believed they owned. Narcissists survive on emotional dominance. They don't just want your attention. They need your reactions, your anxiety, your explanations, your confusion. Every time you defend yourself, justify yourself, or try to fix things, you're giving them fuel. So when you stop caring, when you stop responding, when your voice becomes quiet and your heart becomes unavailable to their chaos, they experience it like a psychological injury. It's an ego collapse. They never expect you to detach. In their mind, they assume you will always be there, always be affected, always be pulled back in by guilt or fear or hope. When that cord is cut, it leaves them exposed. A narcissist without control feels powerless and irrelevant, and irrelevance is their deepest fear. It threatens the foundation of their identity. You not caring anymore sends a message that they can't handle. They are not the center of your world. Their manipulation didn't work. Their tactics didn't break you the way they wished. This is why their behavior becomes unpredictable. They can swing between anger and desperation, between silence and pursuit, between fake apologies and cold revenge. They are trying to find any form of leverage that will make you feel something again, because caring, whether through love, anger, or pain, keeps you tied to them. Indifference is what cuts the tie. They panic because emotional detachment is the one thing they cannot manipulate. They can manipulate your blame, your hope, your guilt, your confusion, your empathy, but they cannot manipulate a calm, steady, detached mind. Once you stop reacting, their tactics lose power. Once you stop explaining yourself, their script falls apart. And once you stop needing closure, they lose the ability to control the narrative. Your lack of emotional response is the moment they realize their influence over you is ending, and that's the moment their panic begins. The reason their final trick is so dangerous is because it's designed to destabilize you at the exact moment you're becoming strong. When you pull away, you're finally regaining clarity. You're seeing their patterns, reclaiming your boundaries, and rebuilding your emotional stability. A narcissist can feel this shift like a temperature drop. They sense when you're getting grounded, when you're thinking logically instead of emotionally, when your heart is no longer tangled in their chaos. And that's the moment they launch their most calculated move. This trick is not loud or obvious. It's subtle, strategic, and perfectly tailored to your emotional history with them. They know exactly what used to trigger you. They know what used to break your resolve. They know what used to make you question yourself. So they choose a tactic designed to shake your balance just enough to pull you back into the cycle. It might be a sudden apology that feels unusually sincere, or a confession of vulnerability you've longed to hear. It might be a dramatic crisis that forces you to worry, or a quiet withdrawal that makes you wonder if you were wrong. This trick works because it hits the psychological points they've studied in you: your empathy, your loyalty, your compassion, your desire for resolution. Narcissists don't change their behavior when you stop caring. They intensify it. They simply wrap it in softer packaging. The goal isn't connection, it's disruption. They want to interrupt your emotional progress, to make you doubt your decision, to pull you back into emotional confusion where they thrive. Their final trick is powerful because it mimics everything you wish they were capable of. It offers a glimpse of the version of them you were loyal to, but the intention behind it is deeply manipulative. It's not growth, it's not healing, it's bait. They're doing whatever they must to restore the imbalance where they held all the emotional power. And the moment they feel you slipping emotionally, they do everything they can to regain that control. This trick shows up at the exact moment you stop reacting, and that's why most people don't recognize it for what it is. When you emotionally detach, the dynamic shifts in a way the narcissist cannot tolerate. For the first time, they're not the one setting the emotional tone. They're not the one controlling the conversation. They're not the one deciding how you feel. Your silence, your calm, your lack of interest, it puts them in unfamiliar territory. And because they can't read you the way they used to, they rely on tactics designed to pull you back into emotional engagement. They do this through exaggerated manipulation. It often starts with them playing the victim. Suddenly they're hurt, lonely, misunderstood, or going through something tragic. They might send long messages about their pain, their stress, their past, anything that could spark guilt or concern in you. If that doesn't work, they shift into a different role, the changed person. They might promise therapy, self-reflection, or transformation. They speak in a language they know you always wanted to hear, but it's time too conveniently, too perfectly aligned with your distance to be real. If vulnerability and softness don't break through your detachment, they flip again, this time into aggression or defensiveness. They might accuse you of being cold, selfish, disrespectful. They might rewrite history, blame you, or create drama that forces you to respond. They want to provoke emotion, any emotion, anger, fear, confusion, guilt, because those emotional reactions give them access again. The reason this trick is so dangerous is because it comes wrapped in emotional unpredictability. You never know what version of them will appear next, and that confusion keeps you off balance. In reality, they aren't confused at all. They're calculating. They're testing which emotional button will still work on you. They are trying everything to interrupt your peace and pull you back into the cycle. What you're witnessing isn't love, change, or crisis. It's control scrambling to stay alive. When you stop caring, something happens inside the narcissist that feels like a direct attack on their identity. Your emotional detachment threatens them more than any argument, confrontation, or breakdown ever could. When you were involved, even in conflict, you were still giving them energy. You were still feeding their ego through reactions, explanations, apologies, or attempts to fix things. The moment that stops, you take away their primary source of validation. This is when their behavior becomes unpredictable and exaggerated. They start switching personalities with extreme intensity. One moment, they're overly kind or unusually calm. The next, they're cold, distant, or cruel. Then suddenly, they might act vulnerable, broken, or deeply emotional, as if they've had some massive realization. These wild shifts aren't mistakes or emotional chaos. They are deliberate manipulations designed to see what version of themselves will pull you back in. A narcissist is constantly scanning your responses, trying to understand which mask still has power over you. They might cry and say they're lost without you. They might pretend they're finally ready to take responsibility. They might even talk about their past trauma, hoping your empathy will reopen the door. And if none of that works, they escalate. They become aggressive, accusatory, or cold enough to shock your nervous system. They want to trigger emotional confusion because confusion weakens boundaries. A confused mind becomes easier to manipulate. These exaggerated behaviors can feel overwhelming because they hit deeply emotional layers. You start questioning yourself. You wonder if they're finally being honest. You wonder if maybe you're giving up right when they're ready to change. That doubt is exactly what they're aiming for. It's not accidental, it's strategic. Their behavior swings from sweet to hostile because they're testing your emotional limits. They're trying to figure out which emotional button still works. They don't want understanding. They want access. They don't want connection. They want control. Emotional unpredictability becomes their weapon, and your confusion becomes their doorway back into your life. The moment you recognize this pattern, you begin to see that their exaggerated behavior is not a reflection of their feelings. It's a reflection of their panic. When a narcissist feels you slipping out of their emotional grasp, their behavior doesn't soften, it sharpens. And this is when their most manipulative tactics appear. The goal isn't reconciliation, it's regaining power. They want to pull you back into the emotional loop where they decide how you feel, how you respond, and how much of yourself you give. What they fear most is not losing you, but losing the influence they had over your thoughts and emotions. At this stage, their actions become targeted and calculated. They try to recreate situations that used to weaken you. They bring up old memories, inside jokes, or moments that once made you feel connected to them. They know nostalgia is powerful, and they weaponize it. If that doesn't work, they flip to guilt. They'll remind you of the times they stood by you, even if those moments are exaggerated or fabricated. They do this because guilt is one of the strongest emotional hooks. They know it can make you second-guess your boundaries. And if guilt doesn't pull you back, they shift to fear. Not always through threats, though sometimes that happens. Often it's subtle. They hint that something bad might happen without you. They imply that you're the only one who understands them, or the only one who can stop them from spiraling. They want you to feel responsible for their emotional state, even though they never took responsibility for yours. But the most dangerous part of this tactic is how carefully it's wrapped. It doesn't look like manipulation. It looks like vulnerability, urgency, or emotional honesty. It's disguised as a crisis that needs your attention. It's framed as something that makes you feel needed again. And being needed is powerful, especially for someone who has loved deeply or forgiven often. What they're doing is simple. They're trying to interrupt your healing. They sense your clarity, your strength, your rising self-worth, and they know if they don't destabilize you now, they'll lose their grip forever. Their manipulation intensifies not because they care, but because they're terrified of becoming irrelevant. The emotional chaos they're creating is intentional. It's their last attempt to make sure you don't walk away with your power intact. A narcissist becomes most reactive when they feel their control slipping, and your emotional detachment is the strongest signal that their influence is fading. When you pull back, they can sense that their usual tactics aren't working. You're not arguing. You're not explaining. You're not defending yourself. You're not trying to fix anything. You're simply unavailable. And this emotional neutrality threatens them more than any confrontation ever could. It tells them that the version of you they could easily manipulate is gone. This is where they begin to struggle internally. Their sense of identity is built on how others respond to them, especially people they once controlled. When you stop reacting, their internal world feels unstable. They start questioning their importance, their impact, and their ability to shape your emotions. To them, this isn't just a loss, it's an insult. They feel replaced, ignored, and emotionally powerless. And those feelings push them into a panic they try to hide behind their manipulative behavior. Your detachment makes them unpredictable because they don't understand stillness. They only understand emotional intensity. They thrive in chaos, conflict, and emotional ups and downs. When you give them none of that, they don't know how to ground themselves. So, they create situations that force you to react again. They might provoke you with accusations, disappear suddenly, reappear dramatically, or even act as if nothing happened. They're throwing emotional darts, hoping one hits the target. The danger is that these tactics can feel personal, like a reflection of your worth or your choices. But in reality, they're a reflection of the narcissist's fear. Your calmness exposes their instability. Your silence highlights their desperation. Your emotional distance reveals how dependent they were on your reactions. And that realization shakes them in ways they cannot articulate. The reason your detachment is your greatest strength is because it removes the emotional fuel they rely on. When you stay steady, quiet, and unaffected, they lose the ability to pull you back into the cycle. They can no longer predict your responses, and unpredictability is what terrifies them most. They will do almost anything to regain emotional control, but the moment you understand why, their power over you dissolves. When a narcissist feels their control slipping, their behavior becomes so unpredictable and intense that it can confuse even the strongest, most self-aware person. This confusion is intentional because unpredictability is one of their most powerful weapons. When you don't know what version of them is coming next, your nervous system stays alert. You become hyper-aware, cautious, emotionally on edge. And that's exactly where they want you, because people who are emotionally unsettled are easier to manipulate. Their unpredictability is designed to overwhelm your senses. One moment they act vulnerable, sharing stories about their pain or their childhood to trigger your empathy. They might tell you they can't sleep, can't eat, or can't function without you. Then, without warning, they flip the script. They become cold, dismissive, or even hostile. They accuse you of being heartless or selfish for pulling away. This sudden shift hits you emotionally because the contrast is shocking. You start wondering if you misread the situation or if you were too harsh. This back and forth is engineered to destabilize your emotional foundation. Narcissists know that clarity makes you strong, but confusion makes you compliant. When your mind is overwhelmed trying to make sense of their sudden changes, you're more likely to give them another chance or reopen the door just to regain emotional stability. They want you tired, uncertain, and second-guessing yourself because that's when you're most vulnerable to their influence. The unpredictability also creates a false sense of urgency. You feel pressured to respond quickly, to fix the problem, to comfort them, or to restore the peace. They rely on this urgency because it keeps you reactive instead of reflective. As long as you're reacting, you're still emotionally connected to them, even if the connection is painful. The truth is, none of this unpredictability is accidental. It's a performance built on your patterns and your past responses. They are watching closely to see what emotional swing pulls you back in. Their unpredictability is not confusion, it is strategy. Once you understand that the chaos they create is intentional, not emotional, you stop taking their shifts personally. And when you stop taking it personally, their most powerful weapon loses its effect. When everything else fails, when guilt doesn't move you, when nostalgia doesn't touch you, when their threats, tears, and sudden vulnerability no longer pull you back. This is when the narcissist reveals their final, most shocking trick. They try to rewrite the entire story. This is the last card they play when they realize your heart is closed, your mind is clear, and their influence is gone. And it's the one tactic that can catch even emotionally strong people off guard. They begin by shifting into a role that feels strange, almost eerie. Instead of chasing, provoking, or manipulating you directly, they suddenly adopt a posture of complete indifference. They act like they never cared, like you never mattered, like your absence means nothing. And this cold dismissal is not random. It's weaponized. It's designed to trigger a deep emotional wound inside you. They want you to second guess your entire experience with them. They want you to wonder if you imagined the connection, the intimacy, the history, the promises. By acting as if you're irrelevant, they try to reverse the emotional power dynamic. They're attempting to convince you that they walked away first, that they detached before you, that you were the one who lost something valuable, not them. This rewrite isn't based in truth, it's based in panic. Their ego cannot tolerate the reality that you saw through them and moved on without their permission. They start creating narratives about you, sometimes subtle, sometimes bold. They might imply to others that you were the toxic one. They might act overly happy and unbothered to make you question whether they were ever affected. They might post cryptic messages or stories that paint them as the strong one, the healed one, the one who outgrew you. This performance is not confidence, it's retaliation. It's their way of reclaiming the identity they feel slipping out of their hands. What makes this tactic so damaging is that it targets your sense of reality. Narcissists know that if they can distort your perception of what happened, they can shake your healing. They don't need to pull you back emotionally. They just need to make you doubt yourself long enough for the cycle to reopen. Their final trick is not about love, closure, or truth. It's about rewriting the narrative so they don't have to face the one thing they fear most, the fact that you freed yourself without their permission.